Hello, and welcome to the AUA Focus Series, a podcast channel by AUA Media Lab. I'm Siranush Sahakyan, a human rights lawyer, a lecturer at the AUA College of Social Science and Humanities. And today I will be speaking with Sheila Paylan, international human rights lawyer and a senior legal consultant for the United Nations. Thank you, Sheila, for accepting this invitation. And today we'll discuss the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So there is an imbalance in terms of diplomatic and military power between the two countries, and there seems to be little hope for sustainable and long-term peace. And the debate over whether pursuing peace, justice for grave human rights violations, war crimes would hamper the prospects of the peace is long-lasting. So my first and quite direct question would be, can we achieve peace with Azerbaijan without pursuing justice for committed past war crimes?
Thank you, Siranush. It's always a pleasure to be with you and have conversations with you, especially since we work on the same and similar topics. Diving right into the question, the short answer is no, but that is sort of been not scientifically, but like proven data-based proof that if you take out the justice component from the peace process, ultimately in the long run, societies cannot reconcile. So you can have the piece of paper that will say we are at peace in the sense that, you know, the leaders of countries have agreed to finally put down weapons and the armies of both sides or whatever situation you're dealing with. But victims of crimes, especially the kinds of crimes we're dealing with here, international crimes, genocide, crimes against humanity, these are horrific crimes. Without the justice component in some way, shape, or form, you don't have the lasting peace. It's not a meaningful peace. It's not lasting. And so whereas the adage that you can't have peace without justice is very true, at the same time, you also can't always have justice without peace. In the situation we're today, the highest level decision makers are in a position where they are probably being requested or required to drop the cases, and to say, stop talking about justice if you want peace. This is not going to be the first time. It's common in peace processes where people say, look, we stop here, we cut our losses, no more talk of justice. But in the long run, it will rear its ugly head if we don't address the justice component in some way. And both sides have to understand that. So I would say the peace process should include some form of justice component in order to be meaningful.
But at this point, we don't have talks, at least in interstate relations, about accountability. So Armenia is not very demanding about accountability for Azerbaijan in terms of state responsibility or even at the level of individual perpetrators. The mechanism which exists so far didn't bring any justice for Armenian victims. And the major recent development was ratification of the Rome Statute by Armenia. And there is a public expectation about leveraging the benefits of this system. At national level, many mechanisms are ineffective. We don't expect investigations in Azerbaijan. At the same time, the cases opened in Armenia are of formal nature. This universal jurisdiction concept exists, but it's very hard to convince those countries to take responsibility for Armenian cases. And despite initiatives, we don't have any visible outcome. So how might the ratification of Rome Statute on International Criminal Court deliver justice for Armenian victims?
I just want to go back to one of the beginning of the question, or what you said, that Armenia is not remind me that it's not being very demanding in terms of justice. But I don't agree with that, because they have filed cases. Yeah, we have pending cases at the interstate level before the European Court of Human Rights and the ICJ. So they have demanded it. And now we're waiting for the court's responses. What is lacking is a referral to the ICC. So having ratified there's what if you're talking about criminal justice, you're absolutely right. We aren't there, because the ICJ and the ECHR, these are human rights issues and state responsibility.
Yeah, criminal justice, or maybe sanctions, political sanctions for grave human rights violations.
Sure. That's also, I've always said there's so much more Armenia could do. There's so much more, like even before the ICJ, there are other conventions that are applicable that we can be launching cases against. We could be more aggressive, but that's it. We could be more aggressive, legally speaking, and we should be. That's my opinion. We can't fault, it's like, as well as I do, how long these cases take. What would be difficult to see, and I think we can get to this later, is for those cases to be dropped. But at the moment, Armenia has pursued this course of action. It also ratified the Rome Statute. And what we would never get at the ICJ or the ECHR is criminal accountability. I worked in the International Criminal Court system for my whole career. There's a huge difference. To watch someone go to jail for committing heinous crimes and the impact it has on victims, it's huge. Even if you don't get everyone, but if you get those most responsible, the healing effect is huge, and it's very important. And unfortunately, it doesn't have to be Armenia that does it, but it would be the most effective way. It's the most likely way of actually getting a case started. And so I would say, how likely is it for justice to come through this ratification process? If we get the tool, we have it, we should use it. And I think now is a good time to use it, but I know politically that would be very sensitive. As a lawyer, I would say, what are you waiting for?
So from victim perspective, no punishment is about impunity. And with impunity, they always fear about recurrence of past crimes and so on. So victims do not feel safe in a world where there is no individual responsibility for committed crimes. And basically, non-governmental organizations are very active. They are working on submissions to be filed with prosecutor of ICC. However, we don't see the reaction from the state or any public commitment to refer situation to the ICC. So what do you think? Without state referral, can we make operational this heavy system of international criminal court? Or receiving a state support is a key for any movement to this direction of accountability? I
think it's key. I think it's absolutely key. And I think it's really key that it would have to come from Armenia. It's not there, I would place it in tiers, like TIERS. My tiers are all the time, but that's the kind of tier I mean. Number one, best case scenario is Armenia refers with the support of several other states. 2, Armenia refers by itself. 3, another state refers, not Armenia. If Armenia won't do it, that's quite difficult and unlikely to happen. And then, barring all that, which, as we well know, is not happening, it's civil society. It falls to civil society to try to push these forward. But this is really like a large group of ants trying to get a boulder up a mountain. I don't want to sound discouraging because it has to happen and it's sort of the building block start. But I also think that there needs to be advocacy geared towards the governments to refer the case, because without it, the prosecutor is very unlikely to, the ICC prosecutor, to proprio motu open a case. Mm-hmm. But it's technically possible. So I think the waves of submissions and publicity around it and advocacy keeps the issue alive, and that's really, really good, and we have to do that. But at the same time, I highly encourage, NGOs that are doing this to work together. Concerted coalition efforts are, you become like a quasi mini state on your own. And the longer and louder you are, the less comfortable it is for the state to ignore,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think without state action, the likelihood of opening investigation into situation in Armenia is really very low.
It's very low.
So we will be relying mostly on ongoing legal proceedings, which are before International Court of Justice and European Court of Human Rights. And these cases address a range of issues, including discrimination based on ethnicity, unlawful killings, torture, and many more other issues. And the problem concerning prisoners of war is again raised internationally. Despite this legal battle, our society saw how arrogant is Azerbaijan about the court orders. So ICJ made a provisional ruling about Lachin corridor and explicitly ordered Azerbaijan to unblock this corridor, which had a vital relevance for Armenians living in Artsakh. But nothing has changed. Furthermore, we have seen forced displacement, deportation of whole population from Artsakh. And in light of these developments, how do you see the role and significance of the international legal proceedings in Armenia's foreign policy, both in terms of their immediate impact and, why not, also their broader value?
These are extremely important tools, and I would say almost weapons that, despite the fact that they have not been enforced or are almost unenforceable, have huge weight, And that's another reason why I want to approach Armenia's actions from a more positive and encouraging perspective. The fact that we have these provisional measures orders and that they are being disrespected is extremely important evidence of Azerbaijan's bad faith. If we didn't do that, we would not be able to show the world who we're dealing with here. And I really think we have to see it in the long run as part of Armenia's foreign policy. I don't know if this is part of Armenia's foreign policy, but it might as well be. It shows the world that we engage in peaceful settlements of disputes. We don't. We could, just because there's a military imbalance doesn't mean we can't start attacking Azerbaijan back. It doesn't mean that. It's just that's not really the way that Armenia is approaching this situation anymore and is wanting to engage. Never did before. Never has a history of doing this. Yeah. So we have seen a huge shift in Armenia's behavior, in Armenia's decorum, even where we want peace. And that also, I think, was present for 26 years. The war, the Nagorno-Karabakh war was in 1990s, like 80s and 90s. It was 26, now almost 30 years ago. There were peace negotiations, and when they broke, it wasn't because Armenia broke them. It was because Azerbaijan broke them. And instead of, continuing down the warmongering path, we are showing ourselves to want to be part of a club where we live in a world of peace. And I think that, hopefully in the long run, the world will see that and will support our efforts, because it's a scary place to be with, drones just next door. But yeah, the tables are turning, and I think it's a very smart move to hold steady and continue down the path of these are the tools that the international community has said, you've got to do it this way. And if you do it the other way, yeah, might is not right. It's just might. Might is wrong. The right way is the way we're doing it.
Yeah, I would say the indicator of success is also this increasing pressure of Azerbaijan on Armenian authorities to withdraw these legal proceedings. This means they are painful, and they expect even worse outcome. So they try to create a new talk about elusive peace process, largely due to Armenians' reluctance to drop from these legal processes. And Azerbaijani narrative is they would not build peace if there are ongoing legal disputes. So peace means no dispute. And until Armenia is in dispute with Azerbaijan in international proceedings, there is no room for realistic peace in between. So this creates a false dichotomy between the peace process and the pursuit of justice through international legal channels. Given this situation and increasing pressure on Armenia, do you think realistically that Armenian government would withdraw its interstate cases?
I think that in all likelihood, they probably will. If it is a demand, if it is part of, I think that that's going to be one of the least painful concessions. I'm glad that we are in a position to offer it as a concession. And I think it would be very unfortunate to drop the cases. But yeah, I do think it will happen. And most peace processes have involved amnesties and promises not to pursue. We're in a position where we already started it. The thing is, many of those peace processes, as I said at the very beginning, tend to not work. And actually, there's like a crazy statistic that I hate bringing up because it's so depressing, but I think like 50% of peace agreements don't hold within the first 2 years. So it's not like, what's more realistic is that whether we drop the cases or not, the peace process is probably going to fail. Sorry. I hope I'm wrong.
Then what are the incentives of Armenian government to withdraw these cases?
To get the peace treaty signed, to get it signed. Now, it doesn't. It doesn't bar, especially when it comes to the ICJ and the ECHR cases. I mean, I've seen it happen where a state has dropped the case against, like I think it was Congo against Rwanda at some point, dropped the case. And you can always bring it back, but it becomes much more like you've hurt yourself. It becomes a much more untenable case if you bring it back. Let's say in 2 years, Azerbaijan breaks the peace process, then we start over and I would say if we drop the cases, we have to have within the peace process now a mechanism that's already been agreed to take over, like a bilateral claims commission or some kind of truth and reconciliation, justice something commission that both parties have agreed to establish. And it should be sort of ingrained in you need something to replace the fact that you're dropping them. Yeah. I hope that that's a consideration that'll be taken, but I believe that in all likelihood, it's going to be part of the chips that will fall, unfortunately.
This would be the bad development.
I know. I hope I'm wrong. I just think that I've seen it happen before. Yeah. But then we really go to the ICC. Okay.
Yeah. Then this question would rise. So we haven't made a referral to ICC. Then this accountability mechanism within ICJ and ECHR is no more valid because of withdrawals. And by the way, bringing the rights of individuals within interstate claim created a huge expectations among the victims. And this refusal would alter the whole political landscape, potentially creating risks for Armenia's security and the broader pursuit of justice. So what do you think? How might this shift affect the Armenia's ability to protect its citizens, and why not assert its sovereign rights on the international stage? So what other tools are left for Armenia to secure the implementation of concluded peace agreement if it happens?
I mean, I think, again, I'm just speculating, but it's reasonable that the primary concern for the protection of the citizens of this country is that we don't get bombs thrown on us, so if it means, and if I were the leader of the country, I probably would say drop the case if that's what it means, if that's really what it means, but it's not really what it means, it's more maybe about buying time. There's also, when it comes to the human rights stuff, of course, at the ICJ level, it's state to state. And when it's at the ICC level, it's sort of state centric, but not really. But European Court of Human Rights, one thing that kind of surprised me is when the mass exodus, ethnic cleansing, deportation, forcible displacement happened, this is where it became, especially the property issues and all that became part of the interstate. And that didn't have to happen. People can individually apply to the European Court of Human Rights and protect their own rights. They have rights. They are, and there's a certain level at which, if people want the state to protect their rights, they have to demand it more. They have to get more angry and more vocal and more loud and not just allow this to happen. And they also have to take it into their own hands. There's a lot of people have come up to me to say, what are you doing? What are you doing for us? What are you doing for us? And I'm like, what do you want me to do for you? You have to tell me. You can't just wait. And in that sense, it would be a very, very, I don't know how to say the right word here. It would be very disappointing for the Armenian government to drop the European Court of Human Rights case on behalf of the victims of the Armenians of Artsakh, because they've lost time. They put a lot of trust in the government to take care of this, and I find it's very divorced, very separate issue from the peace process. And in that sense, a really responsible government would have to say that is non-negotiable. We can't. This is but again, it's a catch-22 where what is the greater concern? If there's an immediate threat, and I really do think that there is a viable immediate threat in terms of the aggressive rhetoric we're hearing from Azerbaijan, what is more important, that we don't get killed tomorrow or that we get some reparations for loss of property 10 years from now? it's a hard one. But for sure, if the justice component falls in this peace process, we're going to have a lot of angry citizens, a lot of angry people. And so that's something to think of.
I think from the beginning, society had this pessimistic view. That's why in the existence of interstate case, many individuals took independent actions.
Sure.
And now we do have cases relating to hundreds of Armenian victims who litigate independently. And I think this was a very strategic step to diversify the actions and minimize the risks. So I just want to express a hope that some of our predictions would not turn into reality.
Yeah.
And Armenia would be more willingness to protect its sovereign rights and the rights of its citizens.
My optimism remains, though, which a lot of people don't have, that Armenia will not refer the case. I think that eventually, somewhere down the line, this is something we just need to be more smart, strategic, and persuasive about. It's not entirely up to them. This is the will of the people, and if this is something we really want, the government has to respond and do it. Yeah, so I feel like we'll eventually get there.
So let's hope.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, and thank you so much for your thoughts and meaningful contribution to the discussion of this very critical and timely topic.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you, Siranush.